to the Dareful Project, a podcast series where we interview cultural disruptors who are reimagining the second arc of their life. I'm Deborah Hotelling, and if you like today's episode, please remember to like, review, and share with your Dareful tribe. Today's topic is it ever too late to get healthy? Is it ever too late to have the body that you want? Our guest today says absolutely not. Today is the day. And she can prove it because our guest, Susan Guidi, has done it. She's a bodybuilder and she started in her 60s. And when I say started, I mean, she started from scratch. And I know you're probably saying she's a really special human. She's probably been doing this secretly her whole life. And that's why she's a bodybuilder, not now. But I don't know. We're going to find out. So Susan, are you so special? Are you special?
I am definitely special, but I don't have any extraordinary superpowers. And I think I love being a cultural disruptor. I'm putting that in my bio right away when this is over. In fact, if you saw my before pictures, I was pretty underwhelming. I had bought into, I think the narrative that's sold to a lot of us over 60 gals that it's sort of just this slow descent into invisibility. And with that, I think comes sort of a lack of self-interest anymore. You're kind of like, well, this is just the way it's supposed to be. I'm supposed to get fat around my middle. I'm supposed to feel invisible everywhere I go. No one sees me anyway. Wah, wah, wah. And I went on this physical journey as a result of sort of this moment in my life that sort of woke me up and said, you know what? It's kind of now or never. And that happened to be for a lot of women. I think they share stories like this that happened during the pandemic. My son went on a medical mission trip to Haiti, and that was about 10 days before the pandemic started, and got trapped there. I'm a single mom. He's my baby out of 3 children, and he's just a love. And not that my other children aren't, but I was terrified. And I sort of made at 63 a promise to the universe that if I didn't have to go rescue him like a cowgirl, that I would just do something significant, even though I didn't know what that was going to be. I had dieted like every woman, like Oprah. I had done every diet known to man, Weight Watchers, the Master Lemonade. I could intermittent fast better than anyone. I had done Jenny Craig, all of it, anything. And I would lose whatever number I thought I should be at and then shortly, gain it all back. So I was just the picture of postmenopause. I often say if you ask a bunch of young people to draw what a 65-year-old postmenopausal woman looks like, right? Say to a bunch of 30-year-olds, they would have drawn what I look like. And I just decided there that I was going to start the change with my health.
So you didn't start out thinking, I'm going to be a bodybuilder. You started with smaller building blocks.
I was always a gym rat. I've always been a tomboy. Since the time I was a little girl, I've loved to be in the gym. My father was kind of a gym person. My sister in college was a competitive power lifter, and she had done competitions at a time where no one was doing competitions. So I sort of secretly believed, that I had that genetic capability. That was just something I believed. But no, I wasn't thinking about doing anything. I was so far away from that. When I started this weight loss journey, I was 182 pounds. I was starting to have health markers that were not good. I was starting to worry for the first time about my blood pressure being elevated, my sugars for the first time were a little close to being abnormally in fasting levels. My cholesterol was elevated. So I looked at that age and say, are you going to be around for your grandkids? Are you going to be around to be able to, you know, who knows, carry them to whatever one hopes to be in another 20 years. And as the story goes, as I started to look for other women my age that were 60 something doing something significant, I found a woman by the name of Joan McDonald. Train with Joan. She has 2 million followers. She's currently 78 years old. And here on Instagram was this picture of this woman. And I often say her before pictures were me. She started a weight loss journey and weightlifting sort of program at 70. Reversed her health markers. And interestingly enough, it was her daughter, Michelle McDonald, who had this wonderful program called The Wonder Women. That had a program that was based on lifting heavy shit and eating with macronutrition. And that was the beginning. Once I lost the weight, I had seen a number of women started to compete on stage. And I just said, I'm going for it. Because if I could lose the weight, what else is possible? And I wanted to defy this idea that it wasn't possible to build muscle at this age. We had no examples of that. In fact, I often say when I competed at 65, there's still no age class for me. No age class. So I'm going up against 20 and 30-year-olds. In a teeny weeny little sparkly bikini with a crazy spray tan and what I call hooker heels, because they're like shoes that you wear in a porn, video. And I wanted to be an example that you didn't have to take surgery as a shortcut. You didn't have to do any crazy treatments. It's funny. This is the first time I've ever said this on a podcast. Before I even went on this journey, have you heard of that stuff? It's like cryo freeze or cryotherapy or something where there's paddles and you can put them to spot places. There weren't enough paddles for me. There was that much fat. And when they quoted me in the plastic surgeon's office what it was going to cost for them to spot treat all these places where I had subcutaneous fat, it was like $10,000.
Oh my God.
And then that's the very treatment that, what is that famous model that had the repercussions from it, like it disfigured her. And I thought, $10,000, are you kidding? Can you just do some discipline here and just eat right and exercise? And I wanted to prove to other women at a time during the pandemic where it didn't seem possible that these rocks of health, like eating well, nourishing yourself, and lifting heavy things worked. I can't tell you how many people have asked me, have you had surgery? I had someone accuse me the other day that I took Ozempic. And I said, this was long before the Ozempic craze. I just did the work.
Can we talk about lifting heavy shit, though? Because I'm a huge fan. I love going to the gym. I lift heavy, and it's miraculous. One, it does change your body. You can eat like a normal human. You eat healthy, but you don't starve yourself. Two, you feel capable in air. Your body is strong, so you can think, if I got into a situation, I could get out of it because I have a strong enough body. And three, you're not bulking up. To bulk up is so much work. So lifting heavy things, I think it's a bad rap from a lot of women.
Oh, it's the narrative again that we bought into. If you talk to any women about weightlifting, I will tell you, I will go to Vegas on the odds that what they're going to say is, oh, but I don't want to bulk up. And I say to them, do you know how hard it is to build muscle? You're not going to bulk up even if you have the genetics. You ain't going to happen. Unless you take steroids, it's not going to happen. But you know what is going to happen? First of all, for the first time, we've got to move away from this narrative of women under eating. Mm-hmm. And women of our age were used to two things. Eating, most diets that I often tried were often in that 500 to 600 calorie range. 500 to 600 calories is not enough to sustain anything. And then when you do lose, you're losing muscle, which, ladies, if you're listening to this podcast, do you want a real secret in anti-aging? Build muscle. It's gold for everything, even cognitively. We have the scientific data to support the fact that it produces BDNF, brain-derived neurotrophic factor. You're going to get smarter. You're going to feel better. You're going to sleep better. Your skin is going to look better. And if you're in a situation where you fall down, you know what's protecting your bones? A pad of muscle. Because if you don't have it at this age and you fall, 50% of women over 65 will never regain mobility. That's a terrifying. So you're right. I mean, it allows us to eat. And if we can address eating for the first time, one of the things about this program that completely shifted my mindset was that for the first time, I realized that not only myself, but women in general undereat. Mm-hmm. And we certainly do not eat enough protein. So almost starting this diet, I was in a surplus of calorie than I was traditionally. Like I was doing intermittent fasting before I got into this program. So I would, like I said, I could fast for 18, 20 hours and then eat within whatever, a 4 or 5 hour window, which I would say is probably not the greatest thing for a postmenopausal woman. I'm not sure your body can handle eating all of those calories within that window, right? And I think for the first time, one of the things is I eat more than I ever have. And it's a pleasure. It's like I sit down and it's a joy and it's not punishment. It's not about a number on a scale. Mm-hmm. It's about gaining mental strength and physical strength, because in a way at 60, I'm soon to be 67, I can kick some ass. And I like that idea. You carry yourself differently.
You absolutely do. My aha moment, and it was a long time before I got into my 60s, I had smaller children and we all went skiing, and I went out with a younger family member, and we went out on some runs that I'm like, easy peasy, I've done these my whole life. And then suddenly I couldn't get down the hill. And I'm like, oh man, I don't know that I can do this. And this is going to be bad if I can't get myself down. I'm in trouble. And if I'm in trouble here with something I thought I could always do, now I'm worried. Can I walk? Can I get up those stairs? I'm suddenly winded. And that's really when I think back on that whenever I, dial back on gym. I don't want to ever feel that way again. I love having a strong body because it does make a difference in how you show up in the world, right?
Oh my gosh. You show up with a confidence that's palpable. It's palpable. You're not, I often say, I'm not afraid to take pictures anymore. And it's so funny. There's such a universal feeling, I think, amongst women of a certain age. But if you talk about women who gain that weight, right, look at them in pictures, even if they are in pictures. If they let you photograph them, you've always strategically placed your arm in a certain way so that it's hidden behind whoever the bigger person is in the picture, and it's sideways. And now it's so funny. Even if I don't have makeup on or I take a picture, there's just this joy that exudes for me that's just, I'm happy in my own skin. Mm-hmm. And it gets better. Like developing muscle is a process, so it doesn't happen overnight. So for instance, in the case of Joan, over 8 years, her triceps, everything, you just get better and better and better and better. And what a thought of approaching aging in the idea that I'm getting better and not worse.
And so if you are just coming new to going to the gym and lifting heavy things, I think that there's a misconception that once you've lost muscle, that you can never go back. But you're saying that you can claw back that muscle, right, with hard work.
Yes, I worry, and this has been a really controversial sort of topic, but I worry now with Ozempic that it's a really dangerous thing for women in postmenopause, because as rapid as they lose the weight, and often people are saying they're losing 15% of their body weight in a really short period of time, they're also losing quite a bit of their muscle mass. And the last thing you want is to lose muscle mass at this stage, because it's hard enough to put it on, and you can do it with ample protein and just hitting commitment to the gym. But losing it at this stage, oh la la, I don't know. I worry a lot about the long-term consequences of that. Yeah. And then you're going to get this look of your skin sort of just hanging off your bones, right?
And think about osteoporosis. We don't know enough. I mean, because you need all that structure around those bones.
Well, that's when you fall, no? Right. That's the risk of falling. And I have a woman that I see, and I live in a condominium in Florida, and there's this beautiful woman that I would see in the elevator, well-dressed, gorgeous, sort of slight frame. The other day I saw her, very slight frame. So this was not a woman, not overweight, but was not lifting in the gym at all, and had taken a fall. Oh my goodness. She was a shell in literally like the span of a month, a shell of herself in a walker, barely had any strength. And then that sets you up for other things to set in. And then it's just rapid. But this is just the opposite. Now, you have to acquire self-love, right? Just because I look this way doesn't mean everyone's going to look that way. I probably do have a little bit of a genetic tendency to put on muscle, but I've been in the gym most of my life, right? But if you don't believe me, you can go on my site and look at all the people that are friends with me that have done this at all various ages. And it's possible to put on beautiful muscle, and you don't have to lift a lot. It's just consistency and this idea on focusing that I'm going to try a little bit harder each day, but not cardio. It's not the way to go.
What's the best advice you've ever received, and what's the worst advice?
The best advice in regard to fitness?
To having a strong body, yeah.
The best advice, I will go back to self-love in the beginning. It's again, I'll often say that for me, part of the biggest shift for me was the first time I started doing mindset work. I had done diets before, I had done this sort of thing, but I never believed that I was worth it. And that if I put myself first, everything else in my life would be better. And that was probably one of the biggest pieces of advice that I still have for most women is self-love, because I'm Cuban, I'm Catholic, I'm 67. We came from an era where it wasn't uncommon to hear Spanish people say, leave the meat for the boys, right? And I love that comment because that encompasses so much. You did for everyone else. And at this age, I decided, and it was like a light bulb that went off, what if I put myself first? What if I realized no is a complete sentence? and that I was going to commit every day to these blocks of sleeping better, which meant I had to say no to certain people. I gave up alcohol. That's a tough one, because then all of a sudden you start to realize, who do I surround myself with? Who am I aligned with? And are they moving in a direction that's going to be really advantageous for me? Or are they pressuring me to stay stuck, right? So self-love was this ability to say, nope, this is what I've decided to do, and I'm going to stay committed to this. And when I say, when you start loving yourself in that way, that the first thing in the morning is what your plan is to do, and nobody can stray you from it. You know, nobody can stop you from going to the gym. No one's going to stop you from eating your prepared food. Even if they call you and say, come out and eat with us. No, or I will, but I've already eaten, right? That's putting yourself first. Oh, so many wonderful things happen. Nobody dies. No one dies as a result of it. And then if you do lose people, I often say, then that was the season that those people were meant to be in your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to make peace with that.
I love that, because, you know, when we go on Instagram, everyone's like self-love, and we have all the little, you know, the little happy quotes that are out there everywhere. But I love that you've got just like concrete steps, because many women, I'm thinking of a few of my friends, if you say, put yourself first, they would not know how to begin, because they've had a whole life of serving others, whether they realized it or not. And so what you're describing is just some very concrete steps to figure out what that feels like, right?
And what do you want? What do you want to happen, and how does that happen? I mean, there are pretty easy steps. There are coaches everywhere. There's no excuse anymore. You can learn macronutrition on YouTube. You can learn how to walk into a gym. And I did this during the pandemic where gyms weren't open. I didn't have access to big equipment or anything. So I think that's one of the things I'm the proudest of, because I did it at a point where it would have been just so easy to say, no, I'll wait till this, the gym opens up. Mm-hmm. But being able to say no to people, I can't tell you how many times I would go to dinner with older friends, and they would always, well, when are you going back to normal? When are you going to go back to normal? When are you going back to normal? Why aren't you drinking?
What does that mean?
You're not going to have a drink?
What does go back to normal? What did that mean?
Why aren't you just going to have, appetizers ad nauseum with us, and a big plate of whatever food that we all share, and the bread basket, eaten within the first 5 minutes of sitting down at the table. And when you would say, but this is my new normal. This is what I want I am choosing not, that alcohol doesn't serve me. Oh, that can be, what happens, because the people that it makes uncomfortable, it's almost like it's a mirror you're holding up to them, their own, sort of insecurity, mm-hmm. right? And I lost some friends. That I had worked in medicine for a long time with, who just couldn't handle it. They couldn't handle the fact that all of a sudden I was just soaring. And many of them were ill. They were massively overweight. And as long as nobody broke that sort of norm, nobody said, well, I'm going to choose that's not going to be my outcome. I want to try and avoid epigenetically cancer if I can. I don't want to have a stroke. I don't want to have bilateral pulmonary emboli. And all of these women had suffered in their own way from this. And I was actually told, and it was so profound to me, in one of the conversations with one of them, they said, well, you're the only one who hasn't had cancer. And I just remember saying, okay, here's where the mindset works, because you could see where this would trip you up. And I think when women decide that they put themselves first, sometimes they may have to take a hard look at, is my partner going to support me, or are they going to sabotage me? And how do I say no to that, right? And say, no, I come first, right? Because he has a drink every night. I just, he drinks every night, so I'm going to drink with him, right?
Right. Yeah, I had a friend who lost a serious lot of weight. She lost 100 pounds, and it really disrupted her family. It was very,
Oh, yeah.
very, very difficult.
Yeah, you'll see who's on board and who's so threatened by it. And I think that's where women get stuck, because when you decide to commit to yourself, I love Mel Robbins' 5-4-3-2-1. She did that book, 5-4-3-2-1. Did you ever read it?
No.
And it's this concept neurologically that she would always say she had a hard time getting out of bed. And so she had this sort of analogy. It was like a rocket getting up. A rocket doesn't slowly, a rocket just goes boom. And so she would often say, whatever it was that you were going to do, just don't overthink it. Just 5-4-3-2-1, and boom, you're in whatever action you need to take. And I started applying that to everything for waking up early. Like, that's another thing that I would say is a great piece of advice. Start waking up early, especially if you've got younger kids. That little bit of time in the morning before the lights come out of peace, and maybe taking the time to journal all these feelings that come up. I had never journaled before. It was almost as if I really made a spiritual shift in a way. Because I started to say, God, I'm worth it. I often say, if Nike and L'Oreal put their ads together and just said, just do it because you're worth it. Just do it because you're worth it. But you have to be your biggest cheerleader. Like, you have to forgive yourself, give yourself compassion, and then look in the mirror and say, 5-4-3-2-1, baby. I'm strapping on those tennis shoes, right? And read books that help, like Atomic Habits is a great one, that just says, do these in little blocks. Just lace the tennis shoes and walk outside your door and say, I'm only going to do it for 5 minutes. But then you realize, 5 minutes turns into 10. And then you say, if that's possible, then tomorrow I'm going for 15. Or tomorrow I'm going to join Deborah in rock wall climbing and try something I didn't think was possible. And getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah, say more about that. Because I want you to go into also the unexpected pleasures. You now do stand-up comedy.
I always did stand-up. I always didn't always do stand-up comedy. I went through a terrible divorce in my early 40s. I was married to a charismatic South American physician who 4 years into the marriage, I realized was having an affair, but not with a woman, but with a man. And it was the peak of AIDS. And we already had 2 kids. And I didn't have a family structure that supported me coming out to them. So I stayed married for almost 20 years. I often said my son was the gift that God gave me to get me through this next part of my life. And I decided finally at 20 years I had had enough. And when I left the marriage, I thought I would have validation. Like, I thought, now people are going to see that I was, subjected to this. And then I joke that he got not only the doctor card, but the gay card. Like, it was like a get out of jail free. And I found that I was fighting my Cuban mother, who thought I should still be married. She thought I was crazy. I had left him. I was married to a doctor. My sister wanted him to undergo Christian brainwashing. So there was no support. And the crazier the world got, I thought, there's got to be an outlet for my voice, because I never planned for this insanity. And I started looking at stand up for business people. And I found a course. And once I got on stage and started to talk about what was happening to me, that was at 50. At 50, I started doing stand up. I realized, oh my gosh, I found an outlet. I finally found an outlet where I'm safe for 5 minutes to just talk about my mess, right? And stand up for me just gave me a voice to sort of make lemonade out of this insanity. And what was the first question? I just forgot that what you just said about the stand-up.
Just that when you start having this self-love, this tough and wonderful self-love of working out, of bodybuilding, having a strong body, that there are these unexpected surprises that happen. But it sounds like, right, that there are other things in other parts of your life that suddenly kind of present themselves. It's,
I think it just all of a sudden says, I took a chance on myself and now I didn't die because of that. And stand-up had already given me sort of a little bit of a fearless attitude. But in this journey, once I got up on the bodybuilding stage and I won and I did it against all odds, I realized, what's the next thing you've been dying to do? And you've been talking about it and just said, nah, next year I'll do it. And that was when I started doing stand-up. I always wanted to do a one-woman show. Mm. I had such a story. I have such a story. And I would hear endlessly, you should write a book, which I'm hoping that by the end of 2024, I'll come back on your podcast to say, I just published my book. But the one-woman show was something I was dying to do. And I had no idea how to do it. I didn't have a director. I had taken improv and stand-up classes. In fact, I'd taken 100 million improv classes from the best during the pandemic. And I would often say, why am I taking all these classes? What am I going to do with this? And then all of a sudden, the universe gave me this opportunity. So 6 months ago, I decided I'm doing it. I found a venue in New Jersey. I had a friend who said, I can hook you up with people in the audience. So I thought, oh, I live in Florida. If I do it in Jersey and I bomb, no one's going to know. And I just decided, competition prep, getting ready for the stage, helps you develop a focus that I realized lends itself to all aspects of your life, sort of this worth it. And I just started saying, okay, what do I need to do this? And so then I developed the ticket sales. I started writing a mental picture of what it looked like me getting on stage. I decided that I was going to pull out every trick in the book of what I knew how to do. So I learned a little bit to rap in my improv classes. I grew up playing the harmonica in a family harmonica band. So everybody never believed me that I played the harmonica. And I thought, I'm playing the harmonica. I had taken songwriting during the pandemic. So I had composed a song about my beautiful son. I said, I'm going to sing that song. Then I hired a pianist who I had played with all through the pandemic. And I hired a videographer, which we're working on getting the video right now. And then all of a sudden, Deborah, by taking one step and one step and one step, I mean, there would be days where I would have terrible imposter syndrome, especially about the rap part. I decided to rap Eminem's Lose Yourself because his message is, look, if you had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted, one moment, would you capture it? And I thought, that's my warrior, scream. If you just had one shot, would you get up there and do it? And then I decided to rap it. And then I realized he does it at 160 beats per minute. And I thought, oh shit, I am in trouble. But I would wake up at 4:00 in the morning just rapping. I rapped everywhere, in the bathroom, down the street, at the gym. I was rapping. And I knew that if I could nail the rap, I would get the rest of the show. And then I improvised 90 minutes, which I haven't even seen this show yet because we haven't seen the videography yet. But it was a total hit, sold out, all of it. And mind blowing. So you realize that this age is just the beginning, because at this age, which is sort of like a really wonderful little secret, most of us don't have kids, right? We have a little bit more time. We also kind of have, hopefully you've acquired a little bit of, if I can curse, don't give a fuck too much, right?
Yeah.
And I had lost that fear of even if the show bombs, the next day I'm still going to have this roof over my head. Nobody's going to stop feeding me. So what would you do if you couldn't fail? I would rap. I would play the harmonica. I would sing my song. And it was lovely. I have to admit, sometimes I worry, what am I going to do to top this next? But I'm trying.
Okay. That was my next question. Do you want to share?
So motivational speaking for me is like my jam. I have to tell you that I did that for the first time last year. And the 3 times I did it, I was a big hit. And so I'm speaking again next week. But this year, I thought my inspiration is if I can reach one woman to take a chance on herself, to feel like this, to believe that against all odds, you have something inside of you. You have a story to tell. And we need to hear women our age's stories, right? We need to be seen. There's a place at the table for you. And that table we need to make as big as possible. Because each woman's story, by the time they've gotten to my age, is a story of struggle and resilience and a challenge and a grief, but a joy. And what were your superpowers? And so this year, I'm doing this next week. I decided I'm going to take a big chance, which I'm kind of freaking out about because I've never taught this before, but I'm going to use a little bit of improv to teach the women. And I think it's about 90 or 100 women. They're in the mortgage business industry, to teach them to get up and do a short motivational speech about themselves. Because I think storytelling is something we just don't encourage more women to do. And you can use storytelling in every component of your life, from meeting a stranger in the supermarket to nailing a business, whatever negotiation, to landing a mortgage deal, to being in medicine. And we're so much on our phones that women our age aren't seen. But if you can hear their story, oh my gosh, I feel like it could change the world. So that's my goal because I kept thinking, what do I want? What does my niche for motivational speaking want to be? And I feel like I've always said, I think all women should do stand up, and I think all women should prepare a motivational speech. Because when you go back and look at what are your superpowers, what are your strengths, and write them down, and then get up in front of an audience and face them and say, I'm special. Look at me in this second. My mess is my message. I just think that's so powerful. So I'm trying that. And then the book would be cool. The book would be super cool at the end of the year to start working on that.
I mean, it sounds like the work that you're going to do yourself through offering motivational speaking is going to inform the book, because you're going to learn a lot.
Yeah. I did through the one-woman show, because the one-woman show almost took my life into 3 acts. So I started at the beginning, the mid, and then, this. And once I did it, I was like, oh gosh, you kind of have the groundwork. Now just tell these stories. And I'm a great storyteller.
I can't wait.
I'm a great storyteller.
I can't wait to read it. So those of us who are just starting, it's the starting is a challenge, because once you get into really going to the gym, you're like, I've worked so hard. I'm just one more day. I'm not going to eat the sugar. I am going to show up, even if I show up a hot mess. But in the beginning, you got a lot more in front of you. What is one thing, the tiniest thing that we could do today that could get us, walking up those stairs, prepping for that 5K, lifting heavy stuff? What's the one thing?
See yourself as that person. So put an image in your head. And I take this from improv and little kids, right? Improv teaches us to play. But one of the coolest things that improv teaches us is say yes to yourself, right? And yes to whatever this challenge is, right? But then pretend, just pretend for each day, for each moment. Draw a picture of who this person is that you see yourself. So if I could have the perfect version of me, who do they look like? Or do they look like Deborah? What does Deborah do to have to do what she needs to do? What does Susan do? Get someone you like that you align with. There are lots of people like, for me, Joan, I just aligned with her. She looked like me before I start, right? Pick that person. Now draw a picture of yourself 6 months from now. 6 months from now, if you stay in the gym every day and you lace up your sneakers, and you don't have to hit it hard, you just make the commitment that I'm walking in the gym, however that looks. 6 months from now, do you want to feel better in your clothes? Did you just go on a shopping spree and everything fit, right? And you stepped out of the dressing room and people are starting to say, oh my gosh, you look so good. Or all of a sudden you're inspiring people around you. Your husband, who maybe was a little sad or depressed or wasn't feeling great about himself, starts to see you every day committed to yourself. He starts to change. So draw the picture. Your brain will believe it. And that's scientific data. It's called the RAS, the reticular activating system, right? Draw a picture of you 6 months from now and see it. And now say, what would that person have to do this? And then give yourself some grace. Forgive yourself on the day that maybe you don't hit those things. But pretending and seeing yourself as that person works because your brain starts believing it. Your brain starts believing it. If you tell yourself, no, I'm a loser. No one sees me. She doesn't care anyway. He's not going to call me. Your brain's listening. But if you just say, I will do this. I will be this. I am going to feel better. I can't fail. Those small actions are mind-blowing because they change. You change. And I think you've got to journal a little bit. I think journaling kind of tends to be an important thing. You've got to write these things down and draw pictures. There's a wonderful woman, Patty Dabrowski, on Instagram, who's like Up Your Creative Genius. And I took her class during the pandemic, and she's all about drawing what your future looks like. What are you now? What are your superpowers? But what do you look like as the future person you want to be? And then put that picture in front of you. And it just reinforces it. It sounds kind of goofy, but it works. It works.
I love all of this. And I'm thinking I need to go to the gym right now.
The gym, we know it increases serotonin, right? We know that. Just getting your blood moving, and it doesn't have to be anything crazy. You don't have to be a power lifter. Just start small. And I often say, people are really scared at this age to make friends, right? I think you have to become bold about who are the people that are doing things that inspire you. And then try and see if there's any way if you can align with them. And Instagram's a great place. DM them, make friends with them, comment on them. Because when you level up, right, you're now surrounding yourself with a community, a tribe of women that are more like-minded, and they're going to elevate you. I did that with you.
I know. I was just going to say.
I reached out to you.
Yes.
Look at this. Look at this level of chemistry and happiness and joy and connection. If I hadn't, in Spanish, we say I had the cojones to do that. I had the balls to do that. I would just say, oh no, she's never going to answer. And you're right. You would have never answered because I would have never reached out. But when you take these small chances, we're breaking this narrative. And then we become like strong links on a chain, right? And I say, baby, it's a revolution. It just is. Because there's more women like us every day that you do a podcast. And I come on and just rant about how powerful this world is when women support other women. Find a buddy to support you.
Amen. Amen. Okay. I cannot wait. We're best friends now. And I can't wait to read your book and to talk more and, and everything. So,
I adore you. I just feel like I already know you. And that is, I will be high all day because of it. It just, that is finding these moments of joy. It's priceless.
It is.
You know?
Susan, thank you so much. We're going to make sure in the notes, everybody knows all the different ways to find you. And
you're such a love.
We're going to hold you to writing that terrific book so that we can talk with you again. All right. Love you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Dareful Project. Please follow, like, and leave a review. It really helps. We're on all your favorite platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Audible, TuneIn, Amazon Music, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. And to connect, you can email me at Deborah@dareful1.com. That's Deborah, Debra, at Dareful1, that's with the number 1.com. Thanks for listening.